Hey everybody! So today we're exploring how living things survive in coastal Alaska. So we're going to look at a weird looking fungus, like a mushroom. We're going to look at a really playful animal. And we're going to look at a huge tree. And we're going to see how they all solve the same life problems in different ways. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Miss Bree. I am a farmer, an educator, an illustrator, a singer, and a proud grammar nerd. So, welcome to the farm school. Now, let's look at something growing on trees. So, this is called the chaga fungus. Now, the chaga fungus doesn't make its own food like plants, and it doesn't hunt like animals. Instead, it absorbs nutrients from trees using tiny thread-like structures called hyphae. These break down the wood so the fungus can soak up the nutrients. Also, see that black thing on the birch tree there? That's the chaga fungus growing. Now, scientists have found that chaga fungus has many important roles and properties, and it's actually still being studied because of how complex and useful it is. This shows how important fungi are in ecosystems. The chaga fungus also responds to its environment. Specifically, it grows only on birch trees, which means it depends on certain conditions to survive. It spreads by releasing spores into the air, kind of like invisible seeds, kind of like, when you have a dandelion that has kind of gone through its yellow cycle and now it looks like a little cloud puff, and you blow on it and all the little seed pods go floating through the air. Sorry, Freckles is shouting. Shh. Okay, there we go. So, when you blow on the dandelion puff, the seeds just float and go everywhere, and that's how they spread. It's kind of like invisible version of that with mushrooms and how they release their spores. So when they do that, this helps it find new trees to grow on in the forest and just keep it going. Now, a chaga fungus needs to stay in balance as well. It grows best in cold, moist environments like Alaska, and if it gets too dry or too warm, it can't survive very well, right? So staying in cool, damp conditions helps it maintain internal balance. That is homeostasis. Homeostasis means balance. So now let's meet the Kodiak river otter. Now, there is a North American river otter. This Kodiak river otter is a subspecies of that is native specifically to the rivers around the Kodiak Island in Alaska. So, Kodiak river otters hunt fish and shellfish using their sharp teeth. They also need a lot of energy to survive in cold water. Scientists have even studied how otter populations in Alaska were separated long ago by glaciers, showing how closely their survival is connected to their environment. Isn't that neat? Now, otters are amazing hunters, even when they can't see very well. They use their tiny whiskers to feel all the little vibrations in the water. That helps them find prey or food in dark or murky water. If you tried to go and get a sandwich in the kitchen and it was dark, you use your feeling, right? You use your hands and your feet to kind of figure out where you're at. That's kind of the same thing that they do. And that's one way that they respond to their environment. Now, cold water, as everybody knows, is really, really dangerous. But did you know that otters have the thickest, densest fur of any mammal? They do. So, they're super prepared for this cold water. That thick fur of theirs traps the heat and keeps them really warm. And actually, even though the outside of their fur looks really wet, the inside that's next to their skin is dry as a bone, and it's super fluffy and super, super warm. So it'd be like swimming with a blanket on inside of a water balloon. So you wouldn't even touch the water. You know what I mean? Isn't that pretty neat? and that helps them maintain a stable body temperature, which is another way of balancing, which is homeostasis. Now, let's move on to our last comparison species today, and that is the Sitka spruce. Now, the Sitka spruce makes its own food using sunlight. Its needles help to reduce water loss, and its roots absorb water and nutrients. Scientists have found that Sitka spruce forests support many different species and play an important role in keeping those ecosystems healthy. Now, the Sitka spruce is a really big tree, but it's also very tall and thin. Alaska gets really strong winds, but these trees don't break easily. So, how do they do that? Well, their branches bend and flex, helping them survive storms. When you get a really, really big storm and really, really strong winds, you'll see the trees kind of bending and swaying in the wind. Well, that's how they respond to their environment, and that's how they survive, right? And those needle leaves help them reduce the amount of water loss that they exhibit and resist the cold temperatures and survive. Now, trees also need to stay balanced inside, right? So the Sitka spruce uses its thick bark for protection and its needles to control water loss. That helps it stay hydrated. So this helps it stay healthy in cold and wet conditions. Yet another example of homeostasis. Now, each of these organisms has a special feature that helps it survive in its environment. The chaga fungus is unique because it absorbs nutrients directly from the trees using hyphae. This allows it to break down wood and recycle nutrients back into the ecosystem. The Kodiak river otter has extremely dense fur, the thickest of any mammal, which helps it stay really, really toasty warm in freezing water. And the Sitka spruce has needle-shaped leaves that help reduce water loss and protect it from cold and windy conditions. Each of these unique features shows how each organism is specifically adapted to survive in coastal Alaska. Now let's compare and contrast them. Okay? So even though these three organisms are really different, they all need energy and ways to survive in Alaska's really cold environment, right? So how do they do that? Well, the Sitka spruce and other plants make their own food using sunlight, which is called photosynthesis. You're right. So, while they do that, the Kodiak river otter is over here being a mammal, and they have to hunt and eat other animals to get energy, like fish or shellfish, things like that, right? Like mussels and clams, that sort of thing. Yeah. Now, the chaga fungus is different from both of those. It doesn't make food or hunt, right? It just absorbs nutrients from the trees and helps to break down wood. So even though they all live in the same ecosystem, they all three have different jobs. Plants make food, animals eat food, and fungi recycle in nutrients. They're kind of like recycling plants. All three of these are connected and depend on each other to keep the ecosystem healthy. Now, let's talk about how the biological organization works for each of these. Okay, so the Kodiak river otter is a complex organism, right? Animals in general tend to be the most complex animals or organisms. So they have systems like lungs and a heart that work together, or kind of how your organs and your veins and all of those things, your nerves, all work together to create a very efficient system. Then you have kind of a moderate organism like the Sitka spruce. This has tissues that move water and nutrients, kind of like veins, but not anything near as advanced and complicated as your animal organisms. Okay, they also have roots and needles, Okay. Lastly, we have the simple chaga fungus. Now, fungus may be simple, but it's a really cool thing. It uses hyphae to absorb the nutrients. So the more organized an organism is, the more efficiently it can function because different parts have specialized jobs. It's pretty cool. Now, all living things need energy, balance, and ways to respond to their environment. But they don't all do it the same way, and that is what makes biology so interesting. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one.